Yo, I just put out Tilde Drums Volume 5, and I wanted to give you a quick overview of the kind of sounds we've got in there, as well as the sort of stuff that I would use in kind of Bitwig, because my workflow for using these sounds has changed a bit. I think we have like 55 snares. Let me just search the things. All of them are named, so you can easily search them. Just search TV5. 55 snares, we have 25 perks, we have 27 kicks, and we have 43 hi-hats. I think it's 150 total. Um, just gonna play you some sounds and then show you my kind of Bitwig sound design bullshit. You know, the kind of tight, clean type of drum sounds that maybe uh, I kind of gravitate towards. Stuff that's easy to mix, good for layering with other Foley sounds. I try to keep the variety a bit higher than normal, just so you can kind of layer them with each other and stuff. So yeah, there's a bunch of kicks, gonna play snares, here's some kicks. Stuff that's sort of, I don't know, good for drum and bass, electronic music, halftime. There's a bunch of perks. The perks are sort of the weirder sounds. Stuff that kind of makes your beats more interesting. And these are the hi-hats. All of the sounds, of course, completely royalty-free and stuff. So yeah, it's $10 on my Gumroad. There's purchasing power parity, so if you're on a lower income economy, it should be reduced to you for you up to 60%, I think. So depending on where you are, it might be just €4. So check it out over there. Just want to show you some stuff of how I kind of start my beats in Bitwig, because it kind of changed. I used to be very much audio drums only, so like I would have my snare and stuff. And now what I've gone over to doing is actually using drum racks for my kicks and snares, just because I find that often I'm later in the mixing process and I want to change out my snare. And if you do your snares in audio, that's a huge pain. But if you do it like this, so what I do instead is basically I create a drum rack for my kicks and my snares when I start writing a beat. So I don't really have to think about sound design as much when I start. I can just put any old kick in there and then later decide, okay, I'm going to change it. And then I'm going to put a drum rack in here. Drum machine, sorry, we're not enabled in here. Gonna just pick a kick. Maybe just this one here. Put that on C1. And put a note in here. And then I've got my kick here. Sorry, that's a bit loud for you, I think. Let me just remove the stuff from the master. So we've got the kick drum here. And then, you know, if I later want to change it out, I can just remove that. And we do the same for the snare. Get a drum machine. Put any old snare in there. Just so I can kind of start writing first and then later think about sound selection more. Maybe you can't hear these previews because of how my audio is routed. Sorry for that. You see how my habit is immediately to go into sound design mode, listen to tons of snares for ages? Well, the kind of whole point of this workflow is that I don't have to do that. I can just put any snare in here and later change it out if I find the style of music I'm making isn't really fitting. So now I have these here, and because I'm so used to the audio writing workflow, what I now do is basically I have these short clips with kick and snare. And the way that I'm going to write is actually still with a clip editing workflow. So basically I just take these clips and copy them over. I don't really like writing drums in the piano roll. So let's say we make a beat here. I don't know, some kind of hip-hop bullshit. Sometimes cool to use Shift-S, just turn snapping off here. Just so we can kind of create more offbeat stuff. And then I start, I don't know, adding my hi-hats and stuff. And then I'm going to show you the interesting advantage of the drum racks in a second. So TV5, hi-hats, You should obviously go and buy the pack. I'm not gonna keep telling you that in the video. You just go buy the pack now, and then I don't have to advertise it later. I think that's a good deal. We can all agree on that, right? So I assume you bought the pack by now. So I can just show you my techniques here and don't have to keep talking about it. So we put a hi-hats here. Need a little trick. If you have snapping enabled, snap to events. So if I've got my offbeat kick here, I can snap my hi-hat to the kick. Kind of get that here, so that's maybe my hi-hat groove. I don't know. Something like this here. And then this is my total loop. And the big advantage of using drum racks is just now I can say, okay, maybe I don't really like the kick. Thank God I have a bunch of other kicks. I can just put them in here. I'll usually put the kick in a cell next to it here, because now I have my old kick here and my new kick here. So I can just swap these out and I still have my old kick next to it. You know, like this. Maybe try some other kicks here as well. Just because often after you've written your bass and stuff, you find, okay, maybe a different kick would be nice. Or I could also do, if none of these kicks are right for me, I have a kick patch I talk about sometimes in the grid that I can just use. So I can just also just put this here instead if none of the samples are really right for me. That can happen sometimes just because kicks are so mix sensitive. So I could like synthesize the kick as well. And then with snares, same thing. The snare I feel like isn't really suited for hip hop. So I'm just gonna get a few other snares in here. This is kind of interesting, and you can kind of experiment with weirder snares like that as well. You don't have to go for the more reliable option because you can just quickly change stuff out. Big reason why maybe in this pack I have slightly more weirder snares in it than I had before. Just because I feel like I have now the freedom to do that. So we've got a couple snares in here. So we can kind of swap them out. And edit them in the samplers here. So I don't know, maybe take the sustain down, decay a bit down. And then what I've kind of discovered is you can use a multi-note. And then if you tune these in fourths, basically it triggers the cells above it. So 4 notes after this, 1, 2, 3, 4, it'll trigger this one. So you can kind of build your layers in this drum machine here by using a multi-note. You can see how this cell is being triggered as well. So now if I want to layer the snare with another snare, trying to find something maybe with a cool tail. I know there's some in here, yeah, this has kind of like some noisy tail stuff, so this will be layered with this as well. What I'm gonna do is just take out the attack a bit. Maybe EQ the fundamental out. And then if you want to add more layers, you just, I don't know, put 8 in here. And then you can have this cell as well as a layer. So I don't know, we can get one of the hi-hats. Maybe make it a bit slower. Give it a bit of attack. That's just here. Something like this. And so you can kind of quickly swap these out and then just bus process your snare layers here. So that's also why I kind of keep kick and snare separate. For one, just so I can easily do the clip editing workflow for writing drums together with my other kind of percussion that's more in audio. And also just because it'll kind of let me bus process kick and snare separately. And also what we've got here now is we've got these sends in here. So we could like, I don't know, generate layers for the snares. Maybe, I don't know, put like Moodle into one of these returns here. You can get these by putting this little arrow here, and then we can kind of get some metallic layer to a snare. So we could like maybe send our fundamental to Moodle here, And then, you know, turn the dry down. And then we can kind of shape this a little bit, maybe. You know, get our different snare layers in here. Maybe also add layers that randomize a little bit. So something like test tone with an envelope follower on it. Has kind of the advantage that we just get a slightly different noise every time. So if we send all of these snares to the test tone, we can kind of create some subtle variations between our snares just using this drum rack here. So maybe, you know, we could add like a random here, and then this can receive a MIDI note using a hold, and then we give it a different fall time every time or something. Just because like your snare is a sound that will repeat so many times in your song, and it's really in this sort of range where our ears are most sensitive, like in the mid-range. So really, first of all, it's really important that you have a good snare, I think, just because you hear it so many times, and annoying snare is really gonna stick out. And then second of all, for certain kinds of songs, it's just nice when every snare isn't quite the same. Similar, but not identical, maybe. So, another technique that we could use to kind of create variations between snares is that we use a sampler here. And we use multi-sampling. So maybe we have a few different hi-hats, and we want to kind of randomly select with every snare hit if there's being there's being kind of a different hi-hat layered with it. So we can just create a new multi-sample. Maybe put these two hi-hats in here. Maybe also these two. And I think for these two, I just want to turn them up a little bit. And here. Now we have 4 different hi-hats in here, and of course we can put many more in there. And then we can use a random here, map that to the select, trigger, note, hold, so it's gonna select a random value every note. And then we use the select here, and we can select all of these, distribute select equally. So basically the select is now going to select a different one of these hi-hats every time. So if we listen to just the hi-hats here, we'll need to trigger them, so we need a 12 in here. Let's mute. You can hear how the sampler outputs a different hi-hat every time, kind of randomly. So maybe high pass these a little bit, and then also add a few more layers. So this kind of can help add a lot of variation to your snare. Maybe get some perks here. Maybe there's something cool in there. Maybe this one could be cool. This one. This one. And this one maybe we want to... No, it's fine actually. Let's give them a bit of attack. Then select all of them. Distribute select equally. So now every time the snare is triggered, one of these different layers is kind of triggered. And then of course maybe we want to glue this to the snare, so we send it to the Moodle a little bit. And maybe also to the test tone. And now if we play all of these layers together here, they're all every time a bit different. And also if we have like a different section of the song somewhere else, but maybe we wanted to use a different snare, we just consolidate these clips, move this up in pitch. So now we have this snare here, the second one. And all of these layers are being triggered as well, so maybe we want to copy some layers over here. Maybe we want this one as well. Maybe not. Remove that. Maybe this one as well. Maybe we want to send this to the Moodle as well. And of course, you can also save drum machine presets where you've kind of pre-selected some snares and stuff. I personally don't do that stuff much, but maybe some of you will enjoy it. Also get the randomized layer in here, or maybe make a different randomized layer. So yeah, I think there's just a lot more flexibility that kind of comes from using drum machines this way. Yeah, I think that's kind of the main idea really I wanted to show you. So in a song like this here that I've been working on for a while, you can see I've got like my kicks and snares in here. And if I have like the context of the mix, let me just play with this mix real quick. Gonna take a while to load, it's quite a big project. You can kind of hear, okay, maybe now that I've got all the basses and stuff, I don't really like my snare. And you don't really have to go in here and edit all the clips, you can just swap these out in here. It's just a much, because kick and snare are such loud elements in your mix that repeat so often, they're just so fundamental to kind of how your mix sounds and how your overall song sounds. So it's really, really good to be flexible with them. And as much as I love having snares and kicks in audio, just this workflow really has allowed me to kind of try things out later in the process, where otherwise I would sit down to write a song and I would just spend half an hour trying to get the snare right before I could even start making a drum beat. And now what I can do is I can just use any old snare, put it in there, write my drum beat, and then know, okay, I can easily later swap it out. So, you know, if you've got like a full song here, you can see the same sort of thing I've got going on here with the multi-note and stuff. And now maybe I want to bring in like a send or something here, I don't know, or to swap out the snare. Let's actually bring in a modal here. I feel like that would be cool. So, nope, like this and this down. So we just get the high-end stuff, maybe make a few less resonators, decay down, make the highest decay a bit quicker, and then just send the snare layers to it. Then maybe listen to the modal in isolation. Hello? Ah, we don't want the dry in here. Make it a bit brighter maybe. So we can easily bring that in here. Maybe EQ it a little bit. And we can kind of very easily adjust our mix that way. And we can just try different snares here. Like I've got this other snare here. If I want to try it, just swap these out. Maybe not, but in a different mix, this might be the kind of thing that makes it click. So having this flexibility, yeah, pretty cool. And yeah, for the kick, you can see I'm kind of doing the same thing. And I don't have to synthesize a kick at the start. I can just know, okay, I've got this MIDI trigger and I can just re-synthesize this later if I want to, or I can just use a sample. Because especially kicks are just so mix sensitive. You really can't judge a kick in isolation. You need to judge a kick in the context of the bass line and stuff. And yeah, you can see with other drums, I'm still very much audio based, because I just like the workflow more and like being able to edit all the little tails and stuff. But this kind of thing is just for kick and snare. It's just so useful. So I hope that kind of helps you a little bit. I don't have to talk about the pack anymore because we agreed that you've already bought it. So that's great. Thank you for that. See you on the next one. Bye.